Welcome to the Community Immunity Series. I really hope you enjoy this selection of hand-picked people that I've chosen to interview to share with you their knowledge and their insights about how you can navigate through these times with physical resilience, with emotional calm. Make sure that you're subscribed so you get notifications of when each interview is being released. Take advantage of it while it's up for the 24 hours. And just know, of course, that if you want access to all of the recordings forever, then you can purchase the package as well. So without further ado, let's dive in and enjoy. All right, wonderful. Thank you so much, Yarrow, for joining us here. Yeah, a lot of people, we're in a time of uncertainty and navigating these waters. So, question I like to start off with is, what do you feel is most important for people right now to be thinking, to be feeling, just to kind of put all this in perspective?
Yeah, I mean, it's actually a universally important thing anytime, but it becomes more important in times of like crisis or heightened awareness, or just even like our global consciousness is a little bit on the edge, so to speak, right now. And it's to ground, to get inside, to go deep into understanding who you are, to align, right? We know we have a chakra system, very simply put, an energetic tube that is the same as our digestive system on a non-physical level. And when our digestive system is not working, we feel it in our body. We feel tense and we get knots and things aren't flowing. When our chakra system's not working, sometimes people aren't fully aware of it, but there's these blockages between the parts of ourselves. So I think the most important thing anybody can do in almost any time is to get more in alignment with what they really want, who they really are, and just slow down for a minute and ground.
Yeah, we have an opportunity. And it's funny, as you say that, and I know you are practicing it yourself, but I know since all this hit, both you and I probably haven't been busier. It's
right?
this odd juxtaposition of, okay, the world's slowing down, but it's like, when do I get a time to take a breath,
Well, I often work at home and I live in this beautiful piece of land where I'm surrounded by forest and marsh and kind of estuary headwaters, and it's beautiful. And I just get all this solace in nature that is grounding. And as all of the hysteria in the world hit, I had to go into work every single day. And it became a very different reality, opposite of what many people are doing, where in service, in flow to help support systems that need that during times of crisis. And that's one of the best things about grounding and restoring and nourishing our own balance, is that when it comes to times of crisis, we have that supportive chi and that what we call wei chi, that defensive protective chi to drive forward with strength, and not to get locked into fear and anxiety and stress in these times.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, cool. Well, thanks for being there, being at the ready. I know you've been sharing lots of videos. I can only imagine your email inbox and people messaging you like, what do I do? How do I build my immunity? And, this is something that you've been teaching a long time. And I'm sure there are maybe some subtle differences for right now, but I'm sure a lot of it is just the same stuff, right? That you've taught over and over again.
Basic stuff. Yeah. I mean, the body has the innate ability to heal itself. The herbs or the protocols or the treatments or the therapies or the things we do are only to help support the body in its already innate ability to do this. So it's not very different, whether it's a virus of corona or whether it's a regular rhinovirus of a flu or whether it's just a cold bacteria or it's a digestive microbiome imbalance. The therapies become very similar to restore balance, see where the tissues are out of balance, and bring harmony and system flow back together. It's about that holistic integrated lens. And this is what all of our different holistic practitioners and paths and traditional medicine systems have been saying for a long time. It's just really relevant when things are a little more out of balance.
Yeah, absolutely. I know before we hopped on this call, you were mentioning you're going to get into, tissue states and give people an idea of how they might be able to be aware of their own and how to navigate that. Is that a good time to jump into that, or are we getting ahead of ourselves?
Sure. I mean, like the body is always in this kind of dynamic sort of state of tension and relaxation. And all the tissue states are really about polars of these different states, these imbalances or balances within each tissue. So just to kind of take one step backwards, essentially all health is about flow. and about balance and about harmony, right, in the body. It's about whole system integrity. And we're not just separate pieces. You know, it's not like just the hand is the active compound in the human because it opens the door, or just the brain is the active compound in the human because it tells the mouth what to say. There's no active compound, right? It's the whole system that needs to be working and functioning in harmony and in balance. And we have many different metabolic systems to help maintain homeostasis. So when we want to look at places where there is imbalance, whether it's a cold, a flu, deep compromised immune system, gut inflammation, whatever it might be, joints, brain fog, all of those are indicators of states of imbalance. And to understand the nature of that imbalance, it's really easy and very intuitive to know the 6 basic tissue states. And these are really, really simple. They're like yins and yangs, like this rose yin yang behind. They're hot and cold, right? That's the first set of tissue states. So is this a hot state? Is it irritated and inflamed and warm by nature? And you know, hot things are like pain or like inflammation, right? We know this kind of stuff. Or is it a cold state? Is it a weak cold state where it's chill or congested or stagnant? So is there too much flow, or is there not enough, right? Is it hot and moving upward, or cool and moving downward? Now, the next set of states is about dry and damp. So is this tissue wet, or is it super dry? And these are really simple and very intuitive. A wet cough is like a mucus kind of just coming out and it's wet. A dry cough is like, and nothing's coming out. We've all had these states before. So a hot, dry cough is going to be painful and heat, and then nothing coming out with this kind of hack, right? And loud and abrasive. Whereas a hot, wet cough is going to be mucus coming out, or a damp, wet cough is going to be mucus coming out. Whereas a damp, cold cough is going to be congested, or no, sorry, a dry, cold cough. I'm getting confused by all these different states, but a dry cold cough is going to be like what corona is, which is nothing's happening. There's all this congestion and stuff building here, but it's dry. So we got to warm it up. So it's a simple understanding of the tissue states. Now the last set, so there's 6. There's the hot and cold, there's the dry and damp, but the 6th one, or the 2 other ones, are relaxed and tense. So are the tissues tense? Are they relaxed? These are some just simple things to understand. And you know when you're tense or when you're relaxed. They're very intuitive, and they're very easy for people to kind of get a handle on what's going on in their health. And if we can key this out, say we've got a tense state and it's hot. We've got this infected, inflamed heat. Then we want cooling, relaxing, soothing herbs, right? Say we've got a cold, damp state, then we want warming, invigorating herbs that are gonna dry it out and warm it up. This is very intuitive, and I'll leave it there for now, because if you want to go deeper with tissue states, there's plenty of great herbal blogs and various places you can read, like full multi-page kind of descriptions of that. Matthew Woods is a great herbalist who talks a lot about tissue states, but so do many other Western herbalists, and so do the Chinese in their form of energetics too, is to understand the states. And I guess the reason why we could maybe start there is because this is an easy barometer that is super intuitive for you to take your own immunity into your own hands, to have more self-sovereignty by just understanding the nature of what's going on and breaking it down. It's like astrology. You're like, okay, well, there's 12 signs. I know those Leos are pretty wild. I know those, whatever it might be. You kind of can help start to understand something by these kind of energetic maps. And this tissue state one is the really easy one to know for building your immunity and strengthening the tissues that might be out of balance.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. And then of course the next part of it, which you mentioned, is then knowing the energetic properties of herbs. Are they more cooling? And that can also be interpreted intuitively, but as you mentioned, there's tons of resources online to help you navigate that as well.
For sure. And actually, once you start using those resources online, or you start to understand that, you get a basic intuition that builds, right? Most people think they just have intuition. Intuition's a muscle. You got to work it. You got to be using it all the time for it to be strong. And that's something that I think is one of the biggest disempowerments in most people's health, is that they're trusting an outside source versus building their intuition. And I know you and I both share on this intuitive kind of health journey, and I know you resonate with that. But it's just for those people who maybe are fearful that their intuition might be wrong. It's okay to be wrong a few times and to fail fast or whatever that is, and just build your intuition and start to strengthen that through doing it more. So it's a muscle, but also get a base understanding of what are herbal energetics. Like, think about ginger. Is it cooling or is it warming? Well, duh, it's warming. Very simple, right?
Yeah.
Is it, like, anyway, and then, think of some of these like soft leaves that are very cooling. And even if you get outside of even herbs in your life, practices that are heating and cooling, right? You go to the gym to heat up, but you go for a brisk walk to cool down, right? just to like slow down and cool down, to relax the tension or to build up. Anyway.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. I think this is one of the biggest opportunities we have for those that want to take it amidst this big, crazy, scary pandemic. There's a lot of fear, but there's so much opportunity for people to take their health into their own hands, and those that already have to step forward, move through this with that confidence and know, you know what, I got this, like I'm intuitive. And of course, there's always going to be a time and a place and some individuals through this circumstance where they're going to need that medical attention. But, even in the news, right, most of the suggestions are, if you feel symptoms, just stay home. You'll be fine.
Yeah, well, they're not even, like with this whole thing is an overblown example of how disconnected humanity really is from themselves, and how easily we are infected with mind viruses, like very, very easily. Like we're swayed in entire directions based on the group mentality. And this is just a great example of that, because for most people, this is like, actually, they probably had way worse cold in December than this, if they got this, for most people. Now, the problem with certain types of like this virus is heavy and it goes deep into the chest, and therefore it can get stuck in there and congested and create all kinds of challenges if you don't move it out quickly and have it fortified with your immune system. But most people, they have that type of protection very simply by living a fairly healthy lifestyle. And so just an intuitively healthy lifestyle is actually your best protection here.
Yeah, for sure. So
besides washing your hands and staying at home, which is also important, don't want to negate that. But I feel like sometimes people forget how powerful they really are. We are all just so powerful when we start to build our intuition, and when we start to build our sovereignty and resilience to outside influences. When we get mind parasites, mind viruses, we become like wet noodles, and we're like, what do I need to do?
Yeah. So on that point, I want to, this is something that I've noticed. You and I have share a background in music and business, and, it absolutely applies to health, whether it's exploring herbs or nutrition. And we do have that intuitive side that are always tapping into, using, relying, in our culture of society, doesn't necessarily honor or even speak about or develop that, but it's very key. And, I just want to kind of throw in my approach to anything that I'm learning in life is creating that balance, right? If you think about like our two eyes or two wings of a bird, or any metaphor that you want, that it's a balance and a harmony. Like music is probably the best analogy of, some of us grew up learning to intuitively play just by ear, right? Just kind of like feeling our way through the music. And then some people approach it from a very kind of like technical, standpoint of reading and writing music and, theory and all this stuff. And the best musicians are the ones that are able to harmonize both those together. Herbalist, the best nutritionist, the best, any practitioner of any art science is when you can harmonize those two together.
Totally. That's that left and right brain, or that yin and yang, or that balanced state, right? That's the key. That's the key. It's so simple too. That's the thing that maybe what we're seeking is not outside of ourselves. It's right inside. It's super simple, super easy. It doesn't take a whole bunch of hoops to jump through. It just takes grounding and centering and seeing what you really need and want, and starting to listen to your body about that. So yeah, thank you for adding that. I mean, that's in a nutshell what creating super immunity is actually all about. Is about being able to be in tune in a dynamic state of relaxation and tension and flow all the time with what is important right now, and knowing that you have you've built the confidence in your body that it has this, because you're giving it the kind of support it's asking for consistently and checking in all the time.
Yeah, totally. Okay, cool. Well, let's dive in a little deeper. I mean, this is an awesome start to the discussion here. You talked about kind of having that foundation of super immunity, developing that, and then, you know, maybe we could start there. What is that foundation for you that you've been recommending, that you implement in your own life? And then for anyone that goes through cold and flu symptoms, and maybe kind of at the end, we can touch upon, you know, specific to COVID-19, what are the directions from there? Does that sound good?
Sounds perfect. But I know you and me talking, it might take us 4 hours to get to that, but no, I'm just kidding. We could share for a while. So as we sort of starting from this place of creating balance and that intuition, I just want to maybe chat on like, what is like our immune system really, like, just to take it to that like top level. What is this like, it's kind of this intangible system. You know, you can understand the cardiovascular system because it's got blood vessels moving through it. You can understand the renal system because it's the kidneys and bladder and this. You can understand the digestive system because they're like physiological. But the immune system, it's got like pieces everywhere, right? We got thymus, we got our tongues, our tonsils, our appendix, we've got lymph nodes. It's all over. It's in the bone marrow. It's on our skin. So what is it? And I think that's maybe the place I like to look at immunity from, because it's actually much bigger than that. It's extending outside of our body, even at an energetic level. And from a holistic perspective, if we adopt the concept of we're not just a physical body, we're a mental, spiritual, emotional body as well, or we have all these other aspects to ourselves, we can take the immune system to this kind of almost egg envelope around us that is our protective chi. It's our energy. And we in Chinese medicine, they call this wei qi. It's your defensive qi. And kind of when you go and you kind of hold your energy out there, you can feel this protection. Or when you go in a room, and or even like I was at the hospital because my son hurt himself the other day, and I put on my defensive shield, just like this bio shield of okay, moving through. But I'm like, my energy's out here. It's not like, oh, I hope I don't get sick. Like it's not sucking in sickness by saying I hope I don't get, and getting fearful and held in. Immunity comes from like strong defensive boundaries. And so your immune system is really a protective coating. And on a physiological level, it's your skin, right? It's your digestive tract, it's your stomach acid, it's the bone marrow, it's the mucosal lining in the lungs. It's all these pieces. It's the white blood cells in the lymph nodes. But we can break each one of them down and start to understand how to support each one to its best. And that's where I like to look at immunity at a deeper level is first off, how do I create the envelope of protection of my wei qi, my defensive energy, so I don't get caught off guard. So I'm not vulnerable because I'm disempowered, right? That's the first level of immunity. And you see this in also the other piece of it is that you're happy, that you have this most like immunity's not, fear is not conducive to good immunity. Happiness and positivity are optimism. In fact, there's been, I think, well over 30 studies done now on people who are happier have like 30 to 40% less medical bills, like just straight up right across the board. They go into hospitals less, they get less immunological issues. There's plenty of good scientific based evidence supporting that just having a positive, optimistic, healthy mindset is an immune protection.
Yeah, totally.
No,
Even the simple act of smiling, like physically, even if you aren't quite feeling it, just that physical action, like the cascade of benefits that it begins to
right.
have on you.
Totally. And that's I think one of the biggest things about immune system is it's almost like a there's a spiritual and emotional and mental, not confidence, but like sense of I got this, that needs to be in alignment for like the physiological to feel it and resonate with I got this,
Yeah.
because that's the first line of defense in my opinion.
Yeah, and so interesting too, when that's such in contrast to the strategy of hide.
Right. Like, I mean, and so in many different we can break it down in all different analogies, but essentially that like force of I am here in full integrity and full alignment, um, powerfully made by this brilliant design, doing work of value in the world, is all part of immunity. All of that, like, sense of purpose, sense of integrity as a person, builds your immunity. And you see it like when people cheat, rob, lie, steal, go into lower state emotions, they eventually get sick and worn down and abused and taken advantage of, and things just don't work for them. And you've seen people trip over themselves time and time again. So my first line that I would recommend anybody is live in full integrity and in alignment, and that's the place to start.
And
And then
isn't
the second level, yeah. Go
isn't
ahead.
it? I love that. So like, what a powerful perspective, and how interesting that that's actually playing out for so many people. And I'm not
Right?
saying directly if someone's watching that they lost their job, that they're out of integrity, but there's so many people that were living lives, working jobs that weren't in integrity with them, and now have this break, this cut, this opportunity to shift.
Yeah, but I know something you share that is powerful is that we've moved out of this place of looking for just dollars in our work. We're looking for connection and meaning and value, right? And so there's an opportunity for those of us who don't stay in a disempowered place. If we've lost our job or we're stuck at home, we take that energy and catalyze it into a new level of I'm going to do something I like and want and create value that actually means something to me now. I have an opportunity here, and that'll give you immunity from social like chaos going on around you too.
Yeah, yeah, I know for sure.
So
Wow.
that's at one level, right? We're like up at the 3,000-foot vision, but as you break it down, we look like on a real like ground level, it's our microbiome and it's our digestive tract and it's our first contact with the outside world. That's our first level of physiological protection. So that's on our skin and that's in our gut. And that is a huge piece that a lot of people are really digging into gut ecology health and the microbiome and understanding the dynamics of it. And we're learning more and more every year. Like, it's amazing how 10 years ago, when I was talking about microbiome and acidophilus, and I knew nothing about what I know now about it, but I already knew it was powerful. But the science and the literature and the different ways people are deepening their understanding about it has just exploded and grown as the need for an understanding of that has grown. And we're at that place now where we've got, I hate to spread this word, but I don't actually like this word, but we're glutarded as a society. Like we've become inflamed in our gut. We have poor microbiome ecology in general. Various types of food sources have fed the wrong bacteria. We literally clear cut a beautiful dynamic forest inside of ourselves for this desert as a society, with the foodscape we live in, but also with the antibiotics and with the way we sterilize our reality and package it up. That's a big piece that's hurting our immune system, and it hurts the immune system of the earth, right? Like, if you look at what we've done on the planet, we've done the exact same thing from a micro, macro, cosmic level in our gut. And so that's a big place where people need to check in themselves before they wreck themselves for their immune integrity, is their microbiome health.
Yeah, amazing. And what I love about the research of the microbiome, well, maybe not the research, but how to move forward with it is, as much as all the new information is coming out, like it still comes back to those basics and essentials of eat fermented foods. As and it goes
Yeah,
much broader than that, but it's like whether we know this much or this much, our actions and what we can do is still the same.
totally, totally. And it's actually intuitive again, right? Once we understand it, just very simply, we might go through a bunch of different dietary challenges in our lives. I like to think of every diet as a spiritual cleanse. No matter what you do, you can eat the McDonald's diet. That's a spiritual cleanse. It's an awakening to like, oh, this is how my body really feels, or whatever that is. But I like to think of them as cleanses. There's no true diet to like follow. Everyone's a type of initiation and cleanse and challenge. And we got to get intuitive with it. Of course, the fermented foods are important, but I've been giving this kind of term I've been using, and really it helps me grapple what the right kind of dietary format is. And it's called permaculture gut design. And that's what I've been really like living by, is like, okay, if I take the process of what people do for permaculture with like leave some dead wood to rot in the forest to create some good soil and encourage these different bacteria and these different species to layer on top of each other and build this foodscape. That's what we need to do in our gut. So it's not just like take prebiotics or take probiotics. It's like layers, right? Leaf layers and soil layers and wood layers. And so lots of fiber, but a dynamic, continually evolving, changing diet that's seasonally appropriate and is fitting into foods that have been stored, aka fermented, or taken into another state, foods that have been cooked, foods that have been raw, but all kind of built into a what's intuitive for the right now, right?
Yeah, that's awesome.
And
I love your, I always reference that analogy, and I give you credit every time I say it, but I love that idea of, because a lot of people, when they first hear about, probiotics and microbiome, like, oh, I just got to take, probiotic capsules. And you had given that analogy. It's kind of like throwing yuppies into the ghetto, right? It's just, they're not going to survive.
No, but they have tons of cash to give the gangsters, right? It's like great, but what's interesting is that you take gangsters and mobsters and you bring them into a nice environment and they smarten up and they actually like show up as integral parts of the community. Like that's the thing that happens. Like it gets so you can actually take and we need some of these different types of maybe tricksters or bandits in our world in order to shake things up and make them dynamic and functioning. Everything is, it's important, right? An ecosystem is only stable when it becomes really complex. The more complexity to it, the more stability. And that's what our life really entails, is this kind of complex stability that we're trying to create in our gut, in our emotions, in our state, and in everything. And it's all about that homeostasis there. So there's been lots of evidence now that shows parasites, actually flatworms in particular, are really good for people who are gluten intolerant and for healing inflammation in the gut. Parasites that we think of as like the bad guys, right? A lot of people think of parasites as the bad guys. There's plenty of evidence now that shows having a healthy level of parasites is actually much better for your microbiome. Having a healthy level of candida, right? We think of candida as the zombie that takes over the brain and the gut and gives you fog and makes you all crazy for sugar, which it does. But in the right levels, in the right environment, that gangster slows down, chills out, and makes your life actually better, and it strengthens and fortifies your body. So it's all dynamic balance. That's what we need to create to thrive in the world. If we're stagnant, even on like a great diet, but we're stagnant, it's gonna create some kind of imbalance eventually anyway. Like you know this from what maybe was the best diet ever for you, all of a sudden intuitively came out of harmony for you, and you started to notice things that didn't work and had to adjust, right? That's the important piece here, is there's no true answer, but the answer as you build and fortify your intuitive muscles and as you strengthen your awareness of what's actually happening in your body.
Yeah, no, for sure. That's awesome. Yeah, because the seasons are changing, right? So again, back to those tissue states, internally, externally, there's always these shift of seasons and responding appropriately and intelligently. And the biggest
Yeah.
thing, we've had some other conversations, and it comes back to really truly like feeling, like being in your body, being in your heart, and feeling.
And that's super intuitive. Like look at when it's snowy out, do you put your rain jacket on? No, you put on a big parka because it's dry and snowy, right? When it's rainy out, do you put the big parka on? No, you put your rain jacket on. Like intuitive stuff. You're like, okay, well, this fortifies me from damp. This fortifies me from dry, cold, So use that same intuition when it comes to everything else. Don't let an expert tell you more about your body than you should intuitively know already.
Yeah.
That's part of the key.
For sure. Well, and that's why I wanted to preface earlier. It's like it is intuition, but there is also that, that book learning, that expert learning, that practice that, the left brain does need to happen too.
You need a base foundation in that. Like, I know for me, I'm a graduate of, I got my clinical herbalist diploma right there. And that base level of doing those years to support my base understanding of what health and body and physiology was, they make all the difference. And yet, it's not until I actually got out of school and into real life that I was even worth any 2 grains of dulse, because it's that intuition that starts to build over the time of actual real life situations. So like all of us have life lessons we've learned. My recommendation is that you take from the base you're at now and just continually give like 10-20% back to yourself in new learning every year, always feeding back into that same loop of learning new things. And it'll all start to build. Be a jack of all trades. Don't be an expert in anything. That's that allopathic approach to like only the virologist knows anything about corona and everyone else should shut up, like like that's super disempowering. When you understand the tissue state of what's happening in the pathology of what's going on, it's super easy to get intuitive about how to move that kind of stuff out of you. It's actually not hard at all.
Yeah, no, totally. And as you're talking about, you having your diploma, and it wasn't until you got into the world, it was, colleague and mentor of ours, Blaine Druzek, he says, Malcolm, like, think about that word. We're practitioners, right? It's a practice. It's like, once you get your diploma, now you can officially like practice, let's try this,
Right.
let's try that. And you're just practicing. That's what develops the skills.
And it's, and it's super important to be humble to the practice and to learn how to accept screwing up and failing and not knowing and use that energy to move you forward. Anyway, but back to our immune system.
Cool. So we took it the super high 3,000 foot level. We dropping it down. We've kind of gone through the microbiome. What would be next on that level and that next layer?
So it's actually before the microbiome, but it's the stomach acid, and this is like your iron in your body. I think of it as like if you were a knight, this is your like kind of like your metal that's like stopping front line. I mean, obviously there's the tonsils in the mouth and the microbiome in the mouth and on the skin, and we can talk about the skin because that's another big piece of it. But the stomach acid is something that is very often in our society hypoacidic. Most people have low acidity, low stomach acid. If you look at a dog, it goes and it eats like everything off the ground, and it just like could eat almost anything. You're like, are you crazy? You're gonna eat that other dog's, like, okay. But it has a stomach acid that is so strong that it just kills pathogens that come through it. Just, and we don't have quite as strong of a stomach acid, hence why we cook a lot of foods to get rid of bacteria. We wash and clean, but if we can build up and strengthen our stomach acid, that is a really important piece of our immunity. And the people that I know that are the most super immune often have like what they would call an iron stomach, right? That iron stomach. And it's just that don't matter what I eat, it goes right through me. So this part of this digestive thing and moving it through, and it is the microbiome, but it's also the stomach acid. And so really simply, we can do things like apple cider vinegar and honey
Yeah.
on a regular to build up and strengthen our stomach acid. We can do herbs, like some of our digestive herbs, like meadowsweet, are super great for building up the stomach acid. And often what happens is people are hypoacidic, but they get heartburn because the mucosal lining is not strong. So if you get heartburn, you got low acidity most of the time. And it's because this mucosal lining is not strong, so it splashes up and hurts it. Whereas if your stomach acid was strong all the time, you wouldn't get such burn. So people think they've got too much acid. They take antacids to help them, but often that's the opposite effect. And it's the unintuitive way, because we realize that our bodies are actually just telling us that we need to strengthen this area, not calm it down. We need to strengthen it. So stomach acid is probably one of your biggest pieces of your immune defense. There's not a lot you can do therapeutically other than just fortify and strengthen it. And there's definitely like betaine HCl is a digestive you can take. If you've got low digestive enzymes, you can take a good digestive enzyme. But even just apple cider vinegar and honey, great, easy thing to work with that.
Yeah, or ferments at the meal, things like sauerkraut or the brines, anything that's
Totally.
sourness, right? Lemon
Yeah,
water.
even kombucha or any of those, like the sour fermented vinegars. Yeah, you got it.
Yeah.
So that builds your immunity, as well as like at that level, like when you look at many of the cultures that live in hot climates, it's kind of ironic that they eat hot foods. You think like, oh, they want ice water, right? Ice water will cool me down. But no, they want to fortify and strengthen that anti-pathogenic killing property in the hot climates, because things ferment or things go off and pathogens happen super quick. So spices are another one that can kind of build that and just fortify that initial protective coating. So we see that in lots of foods. They'll add spice just to kill everything almost, So, and that's what you see in Mexico. You see that as their primary thing. And what's interesting about the spice is it does two things. It doesn't just do that. It also uses your skin to be protective. So the spice then works on your skin and it helps you sweat and push out these toxins. And think of sweating as a way of expelling, right? Moving out what no longer serves you, pushing it out of the body.
Yeah.
So that's the next level, is looking at the skin.
Right. So are you recommending hand sanitizer? No.
Yeah, no. I mean, I am. What I'm recommending is that you are listening to your medical community and you're staying smart and safe. Soap easily washes the fat layer off of around this coronavirus if you're concerned about that. But keeping hygienically sound is good. At the same time, go and dig in the earth and replenish your microbiome. Replenish that health. Don't be scrubbing all the time, right? Think of your little bio layer, this little filament layer along here as like your soil on the earth. When you look at planet Earth, there's like this iron ball in the center and all this kind of hot molten stuff, and then all this tectonic plates, and then all this earth and clay. And it's huge. That's like 99.9% of the earth. And then there's this thin layer of soil around the whole thing that makes up everything we know. Well, think of your thin layer as your protective coat. When you scrape at it, and you take big tools and turn it all into pavement, what happens when it rains? Everything washes away, right?
Yeah.
Look at like California, they get huge floods when it rains, and then droughts when it's not, because they've paved everything.
Yeah, and that's why I love your analogy of the the permaculture health design.
Right? And it's all intuitive. It's just it mirrors a micro macro cosmic relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so taking it, we're keeping on going deeper here.
Okay, so just with that, the biggest thing, like I said, play on the earth, but also don't use so much soap all the time washing your layer off. Make sure that you're getting out into natural environments where you're replenishing this, not just for your skin, but on an emotional, mental kind of stress level. Stress is one of the biggest killers to our immune system. To ground into the natural world is hugely replenishing to your immune system and to your immunity in general. So forest bathing, right? That's another piece, and it actually affects your skin and your breathing. So we have those areas. And then the next place we want to look at is our breath, right? Our mucosal, our lining of our lungs, opening and closing, expanding the oxygenation of the cells. This is our front line, right? Our nose and our breath, and all the hairs in our nose, all of the alveoli sacs in our lungs, all the mucosal that's protecting. We need to keep this healthy. This is our next level of defense. So how do we do this? Again, there's lots of practices we can do. One of the best ones for both the skin and the lungs is hot, cold, hot, cold, hot, cold, hot, cold, right?
Yeah.
Getting the lungs breathing cold air and then warm air, and cold air and warm air, getting the skin exposed to cold and then heat. These work those muscles and strengthen them. One of the most interesting things about a cold is that it actually strengthens your immune system. Even though it compromises you, it strengthens you. Sometimes stress on the system makes you more resilient. So it's the same thing. A little tension and dynamic kind of resiliency comes from being hit by pathogens a little bit. If you were never hit by pathogens, say you lived in a test tube for your whole life, the first cold that comes along, you're going to get knocked right out.
Yeah.
And this has been the case with our viral, bacterial, parasitic, pathogenic organisms that have followed us around ever since the beginning of time. You know, every major epidemic came from an exposure to pathogens that the body was not ready for. Whereas a slow acclimatization and builds our dynamic stability in that sense. So that's another thing that I think is important that people forget, is that getting sick actually strengthens your immune system.
Right.
Now, there's a place where you get to your reserves. And if we look at from the Chinese medicine of the idea of qi, xian, and jing, and your jing reserves are your like backup batteries. When you get down to that, you start taking away life force. But if it's just in your qi level, it's just at your surface level, it's continually fortifying and strengthening that and making that system like a muscle work better and stronger.
Yeah, for sure. So there's a lot of people that are, naturally just moving through, catching this coronavirus, and are going to build that immunity. And it'll be interesting to see kind of on the global scale, the number of countries and the different approaches. Most are kind of going the conventional route. I originally had heard that England was going to do nothing. They were just going to let it go through.
Right? Sorry. Let everybody get it.
Yeah, and huge amount of kickback. That's not politically correct, to say that or do that. So I think they've changed their course. And then I just heard that actually Israel is in fact doing that. So there's got to be more countries that are taking that approach, and it will be really interesting at the end of all this to kind of look back and go, okay,
what's the reality of which one was most successful? I mean. Yeah. Every place is so, I mean, with the corona thing, I think it's just at the top of mind for everybody, but immunity and our strength of our systems have been like, it's somewhat personal in a sense. Like it's going to be different for every person based on their circumstance. So I kind of agree with the idea that like, if we're going to get it, it is better like to get it. But I understand that the real reason for social isolation in this case is to slow the curve so it's not such an exponential growth in a short period of time. If it took everyone 2 years to get a virus, that's a much better ability for us to handle and heal and work with it. Yeah. Unfortunately, so it's just what that has happened. Beyond that, like that kind of it's going to come and go, and it's likely that this is just one of many that will happen in the next 20, 30 years. There's just so much genetic material in animals and in the way we relate to animals that can cause viral epidemics. 2 years ago, there was a huge coronavirus breakout in pigs all across Asia, and they had to kill tons and tons of them. Like this is something that is recurrent and will happen again in that sense. So your best defense is to really just strengthen your system so it moves right out of you.
Yeah, no, totally. That's why we're talking about this. So we don't need to like shut the world down and all hide.
And for now, it's important to do that because there's another piece of solace that I think is brilliant in all this. It makes people realize that they're not invincible. We've been living on this planet in the most invincible way for decades now, just hammering the earth with our pressure and our systems and our carving it up for our minerals and our new versions of the iPhone and everything. Like we just nonstop go, 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 traveling all over the place, not really being stewards of the planet. And this has us really go, whoa, 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 whoa. We're not invincible.
Yeah, no, for sure. So, you know, I've got a question I usually like to end on, and but it's kind of coming out of that. I'll save that for later. So we don't. Let's keep kind of into later.
I got a question, but I'm going to save it for later.
Yeah, hold that thought.
So, well, let's talk about the lungs. I didn't quite finish with that.
Yeah,
because I think it's important. So we've talked a little bit about like getting out forest bathing, getting hot, cold in there. Doing various lung practices is super important too. I think that people forget changing up their breathing pattern, whether it's running, going for a run, whether it's going into a steam and or deep breathing, whether it's submersions and holding your head underwater, whether it's Wim Hof breathing where you're hyperoxygenating and then hypooxygenating. Changing that up is super useful for strengthening this whole area. Mm-hmm. Even doing like circles, rotations, you know, kind of movements, whatever it is, I really invite people to think of their lungs as a first level of defense. And they're constantly going, no matter what, we're breathing in these pathogens. And yes, our nose is going to catch some of it, but if we've got the strength of chi there, that's a huge piece for any of this type of stuff. And we can work with herbs too. There's lots of expectorant herbs. There's lots of warming spices that can really support that. And so we can go into those, but essentially the best place to start is, and what you can do right now, anytime, is really strengthen the capacity of your lungs, your oxygenation of the cells and the tissue, and also practice various forms of breathing. One of the best forms of breathing you can do is slow down and meditate. A huge piece of meditation, really, it comes from just breathing and breathing in a calm way to ground back in, right? So I invite you to look at every exercise you do, every meditation you do, Tai Chi, Qigong, whatever it might be, yoga breathing, Kundalini, Pranayama, Tish Toots, whatever they might be, Wim Hof, as part of your immune resilience piece that you're doing.
Yeah, totally. Cool. And then I know definitely you've probably got a handful of herbs you could suggest as well, like cordyceps being one that comes immediate top of mind as well, right, for helping support, you know, along with those types of practices.
So opening up the lungs, cordyceps is really good about deep oxygenation and strengthening the bronchial, right? Like, so yeah, that's a good one. But that would be one we want to do when we're not faced by a plague, right? We want to do cordyceps to really open up the lungs. And yeah, we can, when we're somewhat healthy and we want to just really strengthen and fortify that, it does have some great antibiotic, antibacterial properties to it too. But if we get sick and we get congested, then we want to use what are called expectorant herbs. And it's a group of herbs that are specific for the lungs for just toning the musculature to expectorate out mucus and phlegm and stuff that's coming out. So then there's dry and damp ones, right? So is this a damp congestion or is it a dry congestion? And we use different types of herbs based on that. So more of the warming ones for these kind of dry conditions. And this, like, yeah, so let's give it a couple herbs. Let's say, for example, coltsfoot and mullein are both kind of cool in energetics. And so they would be better for hot, inflamed conditions, right? Whereas elecampane is another expectorant herb, and osha root is another expectorant herb, which would be good for dry and cool conditions because they're very warming and spicy. So when you taste something and it tastes warming and spicy, okay, it's going to be warming and spicy in the body. If it tastes cool and bland and bitter, It's going to be contracting and astringent. So we'd work with these different ones based on the situation for that. Other herbs we might want to look at for our lungs is, so the levels we'd want to look at is the deep immune, and then the surface immune, and then the tissue states. So if it's deep immune, we're going to go to those adaptogens and restoratives and those medicinal mushrooms and astragalus and goji and reishi and cordyceps and those kind of herbs when it's deeper, or when we don't have any kind of immune thing right on the, we don't have, we'll say goblins at the gate, right? We don't have any goblins at the gate. We can do that fortification, but when we got goblins at the gate, that acute surface level immunity, we need archers. We need straight up warriors who are going to come in and help support that. So that's when we get into the OSHA roots and even the echinacea. You know that numb taste? If you've ever had an echinacea tincture, it's like zing. That numb is like, it's like a phenol group that's just going protective barrier, do not come here. But it also works as like signaling the brain, or signaling the white blood cells, saying, okay, immune system, let's kick into gear, let's get this stuff protected. So it's a great warrior at that surface level. Golden seal, right? Another antibacterial, good for the mucous membranes, specifically helping push out mucus. So then we go to those herbs, and even oil of oregano. Think of that one as like spicy. If you ever had it, it's that spicy warming. That would be a good one. That's a super anti-plague herb. The problem with herbs like this, though, is that they're not herbs you should take all the time. So people need to be really careful that they understand the energetics enough that they have a sense of wisdom around and intuition around how they use them. Like oil of oregano is one of those ones you could take all the time, and it starts to get too strong. Your body goes, whoa, 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 whoa. What's going on? Sorry, I have a cough all of a sudden for like, I think it's this chai or chaga I'm drinking. But you go, whoa, 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 and your immune system will start to respond negatively to oil of oregano. This is a big, important thing to listen to. I've seen people get stomach ulcers from oil of oregano because they took it every day. It's an anti-plague. Take it only when you have to and need it. It kills all pathogens and good bacteria too. So anyway, those are some of the things to be aware of, is timing with your herbs. Deep restoratives when you're not sick, or when you're super deep compromised, then you want to kind of rebuild at a foundation level, and surface level protectors when you're not. So garlics and onions and all the anti-plague stuff.
Yeah, amazing. Okay, so we're going through the layers here. We've done microbiome, we've done skin, we've done the whole respiratory system.
Yep. So we got skin, microbiome, and then we start to get into deeper parts of the body, right? So as we go in the deeper levels, we get into our lymph. We get into that like deep congestion, right? When things get deeper in the deep lungs, that's when those expectorants really need to be a deep level warming to move that out. But then also the lymphatic congestion. This is a huge piece of our immune system, especially a lot for women who have large breasts. They end up with a lot of lymphatic congestion around the armpits. So massaging that, moving that, these are really important pieces to increasing our immune system. You've known if you ever got a sore throat, your lymph nodes swell up. Detoxification comes next. So lymph nodes, think of them as the back alleyways of your body. Your circulatory system is the front roadways. The lymph is the back alleyways. All the garbage comes out there. Kind of everybody puts their recycling bin in the lymph node system, right? It has to deal with all that, push it out of the body. When they're congested, well, you've seen a city with garbage strikes. It's like, maybe you haven't, I don't know, but I remember I was in Vancouver once when the garbage strike was on it. It was just chaos. Everything's backed up. It's funky. There's all kinds of immunocompromised environments to look at. So we need to keep that going. And that's part of that hot cold, part of that movement. And then lymph herbs can work as well. And the biggest way to increase the lymph clarity and have that moving is to do consistent, regular, once a year or twice a year cleanses. Really simply, do a cleanse. Take a diet and turn it into a spiritual, physical cleanse. Eat a totally different foodscape, or less food entirely, depending on the cleanse you want to do, that's going to really move that out of you. So fasting is another good way. If you're in really strong immune health, if you've got a good immunity, fasting becomes one of your best tools, because that can really, the actual evidence behind intermittent fasting is another piece of that too. That's a big piece of strengthening the body. So we're learning more and more and more about this, because not all fasting is good. Not all cleanses are good either. There's plenty of bad cleanses out there, or plenty of bad times to do cleanses and do fasts. It's more what it is.
Right. Yeah.
For example, most people want to do a New Year's cleanse. Well, New Year's is the middle of winter when you should be hunkering in and warm by the fire, eating like soups and broths and stews and warming up, not doing a juice cleanse, right? It's just super unintuitive. We're like, I'm going to do salad every day. Like, wait till spring comes, right? Or fall. So seasonally, we also want to be appropriate to our seasons. And we haven't even gotten to that level of it, but that's a continual diet of intuition based on the seasons of it. But really the transition seasons are when we should be transition dieting, right? When we should be transition cleansing. So that's fall and spring.
Yeah.
They're the two transition seasons. And so doing a spring fast or a spring cleanse when you're in good health and the energy is ripe for it, or doing a fall class or fast or cleanse when you're just trying to let go of all the stuff you built up over the summer, those are just great times to really support your immune system by getting your kidneys working, getting your liver working, getting your blood working, getting your colon working, and moving stuff out of the body.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Well, knowing that I know you've got a bit of time limit here, and I want to respect your time. And what else haven't we covered that you were thinking you were coming onto this call, you wanted to share? What other topics can we just touch upon?
Yeah.
Important?
Well, we I guess oh geez, there's just so much. Like, immunity is like the biggest topic, right? Like, and you even look at, like, go to the health food store and look at the products for every different category of health. They'd be like men's health, women's health, immune health. It's like this huge section, right? We're continually having to work on our immune system. So it's never a done thing. It's not like because you're following the right diet, you're living the right lifestyle, that it's ever done. You have to continually work at it and play with it and notice it. So that's a big piece for me. I think probably, like we started, one of the best things to do is to not take it so crazy. Every step of the way, just build upon what you know and upon what works. When we make dramatic changes, unless they're just for a short period of time and that's the intention, to make this dramatic cleanse or something like that, if we make dramatic changes, we never stick to it. It never has the same results. It's never quite as powerful as when we build upon the confidence of what we learned before. So immune, like super immune system protection is all about that. Start with a few diet shifts. Start with a little bit of hot cold. Have you ever done an ice bath before? Try that. Mix it up. Change up what you're working with that way. Play with some of the adaptogens. Get some of these foods, like these fermented foods in your diet. Just slowly tweak it and see what works for you. I didn't really get to talk about seasonal diet either, but I think that's really important. One thing to think of, all of reality is about yin and yang balance, right? Just like we talked about the tissue states, just like we talked about like hot, cold, that kind of thing. The seasons are like that too. We have this kind of dynamic shifting all the time. And like I mentioned, cleansing on the fall and the spring, building on the summer and the winter. So we have this wax on, wax off sort of way of approaching life, that we're building as much as we're cleansing. We're stretching as much as we're working, right? We're relaxing as much as we're tight. We're continually working these muscles and restoring the balance too. Be good to yourself. Don't try to do this too hard. Don't try to do anything too hard. Actually take as much time as you possibly can to replenish yourself in between physical exertion or anything you do. So that's a huge piece of immunity. You look at all the old Chinese sages, and they all talk about the middle path, right? Do everything intensely, but nothing, nothing all the time intensely, like nothing forever. We're continually,
Right.
yeah. And fortify your castle. Think of yourself as a castle or an ecosystem. It's complex stability. That's what we want to mostly focus on, is building our stability within our microbiome, within our lifestyle, within the people and energies we interact with. And then there's like we could go down a whole level of various foods and various supplements, like make sure you get good essential fatty acids, make sure you get good B vitamins and vitamin C and all the flavonoids around that. Load up on antioxidants, and those are all the color pigments in the foods. You know, make sure that you're doing some of these anti-pathogens with potentially pathogenic environments. So everybody gets the flu, start chopping up garlic, put up your anti-vampire, you know, and eat from just a really wide and dynamic foodscape. Get outside, forest bathe, all that kind of stuff. Tone each organ in a cleanse. And then if you really need them, use your anti-pathogen herbs only in short periods of time for specific needs. And it's really easy to know that. Go antiviral herbs, boom, there they are. Bacterial herbs, boom, there they are. There's so much access to this knowledge online. Your job is to be intuitive and know what it is you're trying to work with.
Yeah, no, cool. I think that's super valuable advice. It's been a great conversation. I think that for most people will be the takeaway, just that empowerment of their own knowledge, their own wisdom, developing their intuition. And like you said, the building our immune system is a forever job, and it's not this just kind of this massive like spurt every once in a while. It's just a continual thing. It's a process. And
right. Yeah.
Cool.
You got it, my friend.
All right, right on. Well, thanks for your time. Before we let you go, we want to do two things. We want to figure out how we can continue to stay in touch with you, learn from you, connect with you, you know, website, social media, all that good stuff.
Great. All right. Well, thank you for taking the time to have me on. I always love chatting with you, Malcolm. I love what you bring to this world with your own presence and how you've created a real niche for people to easily access good nutrition, good information, good education around all this stuff. So you can find me at the Light Cellar every once in a while. Find me there almost every year. I don't think I've ever taught the same class twice. So I'm commonly coming there to test out some of this new information, and they're always on the growing edge. So you can find me there. I've got a website, yarrowwillard.com, but also I run I'm the director of Wild Rose College. You can find me there in our herbal village and doing webinars through them. Or you can find me at Harmonic Arts sometimes doing webinars and blogs through them. And I have a YouTube channel. The Herbal Jedi is a really fairly popular YouTube channel. I think by the time you watch this recording, we'll be at 100,000 subscribers. We've got great content on there. It's a very active community in this YouTube environment, and I'm pumped to share more there, as well as you can find me on Instagram and any of these other places. The world's accessible now, right? We're all findable. So find me if you want to ask me questions. Know that I have filters around me that protect me so that I don't get bombarded all the time by too many questions. So if I don't answer you, it's not because I don't like you, it's because I love you so much that I want to keep bringing you great content. And that means being intuitively grounded inside sometimes.
Yeah, cool. All right. So the final question, just kind of as we sign off here, what is your hope for the world, for society, you know, as we move through this? What could be the silver lining?
Well, I have this mission that I've been trying to live, and it's been my mantra for the last like at least 8, 9, maybe even 10 years, maybe longer, maybe my whole life. And it's this deepened connection to the natural world, deepened connection to ourselves and to this planet. My hope out of where we're at right now with our current society and with our current hype around this coronavirus is that people start to realize more and more that we are warriors of the earth, that we are stewards of this planet, that we are actually the custodians of the ecosystem, that we're here to support the stability of this earth and all its fragile systems so that all life, including our children's children, can thrive in a beautiful environment. And I think that that's been the most important thing for a long time for me, to show up in a way that I am being a warrior for the earth, and that I am deepening connection to Mother Nature and to the nature's medicine and nature's power. And so my hope out of all this is that more and more people awaken to that inside of themselves, that they're here on purpose to bring value to this conversation around how do we support this beautiful planet that we live on, because we're not going to do a Star Trek, Star Wars thing. That does not exist. I mean, that's a tangent for me, but it's like literally every astronaut that left this planet had major bone density loss issues. Their immune systems got super compromised. We can't leave this earth. We need to protect it. So that's my hope, is that people recognize that at a deep level and start to show up in service to that cause.
Yeah, awesome. Well said. And thank you again for sharing. And we'll see you on the other side of this. Keep putting out all the content, and yeah, we'll be in touch soon.
All right, my friend. Ciao.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Really hope you enjoyed that interview. Be sure to subscribe to make sure that you are receiving notifications of all the videos coming out. And if you want access to the entire video series, something that you can replay, you can share with friends and family, then definitely make sure you take advantage of the offer to get access to all of that. And thank you again for being part of this community in this series called Community Immunity.